For today's lesson, we are going to be covering servers for remote management. So in Windows Server 2012 R2, R2 is really designed to be managing all of the systems remotely. So that could be either from an administrative workstation or from a server that you've designed to be a centralized administrative server. So what we're going to be looking at in our talk today is we're going to be talking about remote management of domain and workgroup servers and showing you how to set that up and work with that with Server Manager. We're also going to be showing you how to set up the Windows firewall on remote systems so that you can remotely manage the firewall. And last, we're going to focus in on the remote server administration tools on Windows 10. So Microsoft really promotes this as the model for managing your remote systems. So let's get started. So when we're managing non-domain joined servers, there's some things we have to keep in mind. Normally in an Active Directory domain services environment, we're using Kerberos for authentication. In workgroup environments, we don't have Kerberos. So what that means is that when we connect to remote non-domain joined servers, we need to connect with credentials from that other system so that have been created locally. The other thing is that in order to work with a non-domain joined server, we need to have those credentials like we just talked about. We also need to add the remote servers to what's called a trusted host list, and we use WS management for that. And depending on the remote server, you need to configure WinRM, the Windows Remote Management Service. We don't need to do that for 2012 R2, so we're good to go. So in our next demo, we're going to go through managing remote servers with Server Manager. So in this demo, we're going to be going over setting up Server Manager and getting our remote system connected. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to set up our trusted hosts on server A so that we can work with a workgroup computer. So we do that by using a PowerShell command. We're using set-item and we're accessing the WSMan settings on our system. So we're doing that by doing wsman:/localhost/client/trusted hosts. And I'm setting that with an asterisk or wildcard. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow my system to trust every non-domain joined machine. Make a note of this. You don't want to do this in a production environment. You would normally want to specify either the IP addresses or the names of the remote systems you want to work with. But in a test environment, this works perfectly well while you're just working with some things in a test scenario like we're doing. And then concatenate is basically going to add this onto the current trusted host, and then we're basically going to force that to work. So let's go ahead and run that command. So that will set that for us. Now I'm creating a variable with a credential that I'm going to use for connecting to that remote system. So we'll put in the password. And now we're going to do an invoke -command. And then I'm connecting to computer 10.0.0.3, which is my workgroup computer, using that credential. And then I'm just doing a script block and calling $environmental computer name to get the computer name environmental variable from that system. So when we do that, we see it brings back workgroup 01. So that's proven for us that we're able to connect to that remote system with PowerShell and be able to access information on it. So at this point, we can now start working with Server Manager. So I'll go ahead and open up Server Manager. So we see we're here in the dashboard here. So I'm going to go down to all servers. And you notice that server A is the only one listed here right now. So I'm going to go up to Manage, Add Servers, and first I'm going to do a Find in Active Directory, and you see that it has Server B. So we'll go ahead and add Server B in, and then it'll take a couple moments for that to connect and come online. So notice it's online here. Performance counters aren't started, so that's not a big deal. So we know that this is online, and then we can work with server B. So now let's go ahead and add in that workgroup computer. So we're going to go add servers again. This time we're going to choose DNS. So I'm going to put in the IP address for my server. So 10.0.0.3. And this is going to spin for a little bit because what it's trying to do is it's trying to resolve that to a name, and it's going to fail out. So even though it fails out, it's going to give us an opportunity to still add that computer in with that DNS entry. I'm sorry, with that IP address. So we'll click yes, and it goes ahead and adds that in. Notice it came up with a WinRM default authentication error, because remember the default authentication is using Kerberos and using the credentials I'm currently logged in with. So what I need to do is I need to right click, choose manage as, and this is where we talked about this before. We put in the credentials for the remote system. So we're going to go ahead and put those in, and I'm just going to remember those because it is a lab environment. And then there we go. So there we go, and we see that that's online. We've got the name, everything all set up. The reason the name resolved here is because I had ended up going and creating a DNS record for that using PowerShell. And we'll cover that more when we get into DNS with Windows Server. So that's how we get all of our servers set up working in Server Manager. Once they're all in Server Manager, we can then start working with those remotely through the console. So you'll notice that we have the events for Workgroup 01 as we're connected here. One of the things you can do with events is you can configure the event data to modify these to get the last 24, the last 36, whatever you want as far as getting the data. You can bring in informational. Default is critical, error, and warning for that. One of the nice things that I really like is the ability to right-click and then access all of the tools you want to use on the remote system. So I can add roles and features. I can access computer management, remote desktop, PowerShell, one of my favorites. We can also configure our NIC teaming as well. We can start performance counters on that remote system. And then if we no longer want to use it, we can then remove that from the system. So that gives us an easy way to manage all of our servers through a single dashboard on a single system. And when we get to the RSAT tools on Windows 10, you'll be able to do this exact same thing that we have here on your Windows 10 system. And that's Server Manager with remote systems. So in this demo, we're going to go through the process for configuring the Windows firewall on remote systems using PowerShell. So now we're going to take a look at setting up Server B, our remote server, so that we can manage the Windows firewall rules remotely. By default, even though we have remote management turned on, we can't get access to the firewall. So what we need to do is we need to enable a number of rules. So first, we see on lines 19 through 21, we're adding remote event log services rules. Next, you see on line 22 and 23, we see the rules for remote firewall admin. These two rules you won't see in the book. However, they are required to get this to work. So it's one of the things that the author missed. 24, COM plus network access -DCOM-in is what we need. So all 5 of those rules together are going to get us access. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you all of the firewall rules that I have on my current server. So I'm doing the get-net firewall rule, and then I'm simply putting that into a table so it's easier to read. So that'll dump all of the rules we have and tell us whether they're enabled or disabled. Now I want to just get all of the rules related to remote event log service, and I want to display those. So we see those are the 3 rules. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the remote firewall admin. So we see that those are our rules. So then we're going to use those to be able to set our remote server. So what we're going to do is we're going to use invoke-command against server B with my credentials, and we're going to have to create a little variable here for the credentials because I need to redo those. We'll put in credential equals get-credentials. That way it'll be nice and it'll prompt me for that. Then in my script block, these are the things that I want to run on the remote system. So I'm doing that get-net firewall rule, the same thing that we did above. So it'll bring back all three of those rules. And then I can pipe that into set-net firewall rule where enabled is equal to true. So this is an easy way for me to turn all of those rules on. And so I'm going to do that for the remote firewall admin as well. And then I'm going to just use the set-net firewall rule for the complex network. So we'll go ahead and run those commands. Put in my credentials. And now we should be able to go in, and if we fire off our MMC console, we see now I'm able to access server B. So you see server B listed up here. I had just gone in and I had created an MMC console for the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security, and I had simply added server B in so that we could just launch it right away. And then I could go in here and then I could manage any of the firewall rules remotely. And that's setting it up so you can work with the remote Windows Firewall. So the next thing we're going to talk about is setting up the RSAT tools on Windows 10. So the remote server administration tools, or the RSAT tools, are what we use to manage Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2 from a client workstation. So it includes all of the tools. So it includes all of the management tools along with all of the PowerShell modules that you need in order to work with those remote systems. The reason why this is so important is Microsoft is really basically going, hey, you need to stop logging onto servers and you need to start managing everything remotely. We've talked about this in class numerous times, and it's just really the wave of the future. Your servers should be in your data center, and you should be managing them using either the RSAT tools or with PowerShell. So first thing you need to do is you need to go out to Microsoft and you need to download the tools. So in this case, I've got a screenshot for Windows 8, even though we're going to do Windows 10. So you need to get the remote server administration tools for the operating system that you're running with. The thing to keep in mind with the RSAT tool versions is that the RSAT tool versions match the server operating system. So Windows 8 matches Windows Server 2012. Windows 8.1 manage Windows Server 2012 R2, and then Windows 10 actually matches with the soon to come out Windows Server 2016. However, you can use those with the 2012 and 2012 R2. So let's jump into our demo where we're going to install the RSAT tools and get them set up on a Windows 10 workstation. So now we're going to install the RSAT tools on Windows 10 and get them default configured. So you notice here, I've already downloaded the RSAT tools for Windows 10 from Microsoft. Notice it says in here TP5. So these are still the technical preview 5 since Windows Server 2016 or whatever they're going to name it hasn't been deployed yet. So we'll go ahead and launch the installer here. And this will take just a couple minutes for us to get the RSAT tools installed. Like I said before, once the RSAT tools are installed, then we can start going through the process for actually connecting to our remote systems using a Windows 10 machine. So we'll go ahead and accept these, and this is going to go through the process for installing these. Once this is finished, we may have to do a reboot. So once this is done, we'll come back, we'll get our RSAT tools all set up. So now we're back. We're logged into our Windows 10 client. That's domain joined. We've installed the RSAT tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply search for Server Manager. So I'm going to simply search for Server Manager. So we'll go ahead and run Server Manager. And notice Server Manager, no servers are loaded up in here. So I can go in and manage, add servers, find on my domain, add in those servers, click OK. Once these resolve, there we go. So now we can work with each one of those individual servers. And then I could do the same thing for the Workgroup server as well. I would go in, I would have to set the trusted host on that, and then I could add that in like I did on the other server. Now I can fully manage my systems remotely using Server Manager, and I can also use PowerShell as well because I now have access to the PowerShell commandlets from installing that. So this is a really important tool and something we'll be exploring this in class, in this class, and later classes, and you're absolutely going to be using this on the job. So that really covers for us server management. So we'll see you next time.